hear? Everything okay?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep. Sounds good. Hold on. I'm going to transition this right over right now. We'll just get started. Hi, there he is. Look at that.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Hi, it's a special report this morning. Philip, we couldn't have the second hour yesterday, so I'm bringing him on today, and he's got to bug out a little bit early at the bottom of the hour because he's heading over to Tom Hartman's, and that'll be a good time. We'll tee you up, and in many ways, spoil you for that by making you swear and get used to the idea before you end up on. So,
Sure.
welcome. Yeah, make sure audio sounds okay to everybody, and welcome. Let's see, I'm going to turn you up a little bit in here.
I've got my new mic. And
Oh.
I'm still kind of beta testing it. I'm getting a little return.
Are you?
Let's see.
That might be, yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna.
It's a little digitally. Yeah.
Test.
Yeah, that's way better. Yeah, we were getting a little digital noise in that one, but it'll just take some finagling. It's all right. The new stuff always needs a test or two, but you sound much better. Excellent. But hi and welcome. Lots going on, obviously, across the board. Post, Zelensky China meeting, which is, eating up a lot of airwaves, not a lot of substance to it. But Zelensky's very smart in sticking that crowbar in and wiggling it. So, anyways,
It's a lot of it's for show. It's a lot of it, I think, is to allow the Russians to say, well, look how unreasonable the West is being. Look how unreasonable the Ukrainians are going, because they're just dismissing this Chinese proposal. But the Chinese proposal is clearly built and designed to favor Russia, because fundamentally it does this whole thing about international borders and territorial integrity. And that kind of language has a lot of people thinking, well, sure, if that's the territory that Russia has stolen from Ukraine and held, fake BS referendums,
right?
Then sure, that's territorial integrity. But most Ukrainians and most of the international world, who is, it must be said, also has a vested interest in maintaining the rules-based order.
Yeah.
Because if you start just messing around with borders because you're big and the other guy's small, that's what the UN Charter, that's what NATO, that's what everything that was built out of the post-World War II world. I mean, America has never tried to annex territory, for example, since 1945, to the best of my knowledge.
Yes.
I mean, name me an instance.
Yeah, we have a rude habit of giving countries back after they're done.
Yeah. There's a difference between exerting influence and seizing territory. What the Russians are doing is seizing territory, and that sets a very ugly precedent. So if China goes in there and says, this is now the new rules-based order, where if you just want to grab a bunch of territory, hold a fake referendum.
Yes.
I'm looking at you, Taiwan.
Yeah.
But not just. I mean, anybody who has, this is why we went to war in 91 in the first Gulf War. It wasn't that Saddam wanted to take back the provinces that he says were legitimately ceded to him.
Yeah.
As part of, I think it was the Balfour agreement.
Yeah.
It might have been Sykes-Picot. It doesn't matter. Saddam thought he had
dibs on that land,
on some territory, that was inside Kuwait, and so he took it by force. And that's why the entire international community had the Gulf War. I mean, that was, and maybe we're splitting hairs, and critics of mine who say, who disagree with me, I still stand by that. I think the idea of taking territory by force of arms and then annexing it opens up a whole can of worms and sends us back into the imperial era, the
Sure.
era of colonialism.
Which there are
So
plenty of people clamoring for, across the
yeah,
political spectrum in a lot of these countries. The what would effectively be the silenced minorities of political extremists in a lot of countries that in the in the era of globalization and global trade specifically, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about globalization had a nice term because we all live on this blue marble, so we should act like it and hold hands a little bit, which was why that kind of took off, when in reality what they're talking about is global trade. We can, and somebody's got to police the seas and Bretton Woods and all that kind of stuff. But in the case of these guys, there's a during that process, a lot of people were marginalized that had incredible political power, in terms of authoritarianism, and from the Maoists to the to the Hitlerians to the Ayn Rand corporatists, the farthest fringes of sort of right wing libertarianism, that any company that wants to roll into a country, if they can kill off tribes and poison the water and the tribes are just dumb enough to let them, then that should be their right. That would be the far right version of of Stalinism and Maoism in that regard. And those people got pushed to the side for a very long time. And now they've given, the Trumps of the world, and certainly Putin and Xi, have given voice to them and hope to them for the first time in decades.
yeah, and that's why the Xi-based, the Chinese-based proposal has a lot of people here, at least, and I know a lot of people in the West as well, highly skeptical about it. Yeah, the
Right.
last thing I'll say about this, and then we can also talk a little bit about the phone call,
Yeah.
is the fact that post 1945 we learned. I think that the rules based order and the kind of what we tried to do with, like, okay, these are the borders, because once you start, because you're bigger or stronger, start snipping away at stuff like what happened in the Second World War, it
Right.
leads to these bigger wars and this question of who owns this territory. So if I steal your territory and then the other guy's going to want to steal it back and blah blah blah, it's Alsace-Lorraine. It's all the stuff that led to the Second World War. It's the
Right.
onslaughts. It's Poland basically. Uh,
Yeah.
if you can get that off the table
Yeah.
and say these are the borders, and then of course we could potentially have referendums, we could have all sorts of things, but annexing by force of arms has to be something that gets put into the dustbin of history, because it just never stops.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
I think
and
that's a lot of
and
what's happening here.
it's absolutely what's happening here. As a matter of fact, and I'll let me show you what I'm talking about. In this one right here, there's an article, and this story that's coming out right now. This is Tokiev. He's the head of Kazakhstan, and he actually, is responding to this fact that they were trying to do to Kazakhstan what they did Ukraine, which is say there's a big chunk of this country that is, that is Russian speaking and is, they prefer to be Russian and yada yada yada. And in this particular case, we'll just take that land.
And I'm sure,
And
I have
and
no
he,
doubt
yeah,
that there was also some sort of phraseology of, like, it was only by a trick of history that this territory is not Russian. I mean, really, this should be Russian. It's
right.
just circumstance that it's not. It's the whole breakup of the Soviet Union happened so badly, and we really do. We that's really ours.
Yeah.
And then we go into the slippery slope again.
Well, and then this is what they did with Georgia. This is what they're doing with Chechnya. This is what what the Chinese foreign minister got called out for saying about the rights of these countries to exist. At all, saying there's no real international belief that they do or should exist. They don't have independence or sovereignty of any sort. I mean, there's it was, I mean, they pulled back from it. They really did. And it's not, it's not surprising that they did because of the Taiwan issue. But ultimately, it's pretty obvious that they, this is part of the plan going forward. The way they talk about Estonia and Latvia, the way they talk about, any country, shit, the way they talk about Berlin, for Christ's sake, like, this is never going to end unless they do, unless this idea dies a horrible death. And that's why I think so many people are supportive of it, even while the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world are clamoring on and on. The reality is that, most of the Republican Party even is like, nah, screw this. And it's one of the biggest bipartisan issues because it's obvious to anybody that's paying any attention that this is just a growth act by Russia to seize power, resources, the economics of entire swaths of the world and use them for authoritarian means. The same way that, like, China's way better with it with the Belt and Road Initiative. They were better at BSing everybody. It's still the same ploy. It's just way more subtle and long term because they could afford to for a while because everybody was giving them the benefit of the doubt. The Russians, if they wanted to set up, agricultural projects and infrastructure projects across the world, everybody would go, right. But China, everybody was giving them sort of the benefit of the doubt for about 15 years because of the hide your, strength, bide your time shit that they were pulling in the 90s. And that they hadn't fallen apart like the Soviet Union. But this is kind of, this is Tokayev, who, by the way, ethnically is more Chinese than he is Russian. Same thing. And he's like, they're doing this. He even says, I want to say the situation in Ukraine is clearly mirrored on Kazakhstan. There are also huge areas inhabited by Russian speakers, said the Komolskovya Pravda, the propagandist. Yeah. They're basically saying, they mostly speak Russian, so it's basically Russian, so we should just take it.
The history of Central Asia is filled with stories of the Russians seeding their populations into those parts of the world.
Right.
First during Empire and then during the Soviet era. They seeded Russians, ethnic Russians, like all over the place. And the Soviets were big on mass deportations and sending people to gulags that were, they might have been inside the Soviet Republic of Uzbekistan, but, they were populated mostly by breaking bricks, and then they had their own little gulag villages. Right. When the Soviet system fell apart, they were still there. And it's you and I have talked about this in the past. A lot of these issues are based on the fact that a lot of things that should have been addressed in 1991 when the Soviet Union fell apart was kicked down. The can was kicked down the road.
Right.
For a variety of reasons, both domestically inside the former Soviet Union and also because the international community didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the carpetbaggers came in and
right.
All the messes.
Well, and also they, again, we've talked about this a bunch, but I would like to also put in the historical context that in a lot of ways they were welcomed because of the thirst for it, the suppressed sort of beach ball being held underwater for so frigging long that eventually once people were able to try and have some freedom or some business, or whatever, they were obviously they leapt at every possible opportunity, which is a great sucker's game. It sets people up to sign contracts that are shit. Ask any desperate actor on their first series. The stuff you're okay with, that's why everybody renegotiates in their second year, is because you were okay with a bunch of stuff because you were basically starving. The same thing happened in Russia. And by the way, the same thing will happen to China as it breaks up in the next decade.
Yeah.
It's going to be just as bad. Yeah.
But I mean, this war is the beginning of the crisis.
Yes.
A crisis that grew out of 91 and the collapse of the Soviet Union and how badly that happened. Managed or not, I don't want to start pointing. Ultimately, the fingers need to be pointed at Moscow. But
Mhm.
I remember being in Moscow in the 90s and
Mhm.
there being some cautious optimism that finally there could be some actual real civil society development
And then
here. You
Matt
know, you have a
Taibbi
middle
showed up,
class.
and everybody went, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, yeah. Well, you kid, but it's not that
No,
far off. There were a
no,
lot
he
of
was
people
indicative. He was indicative of the ticks that jumped on that dog as soon as it started
playing
walking through
very
the field.
fast and loose.
Totally.
Playing very fast. Didn't give a shit about the people. Didn't give a shit about the country.
Right.
Not really. Gave lip service to a bunch of stuff like, "Oh, we don't let yourself fall under American imperialism." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Tybee and Ames, the guys who used to run the what's the expat? What did they call it?
The exile.
The the exile, right? So they used to have a regular guy who would come and write an editorial, an op-ed, and he called himself a communist, but
Mm-hmm.
he was really more like a fascist. He just wanted the exertion of power and no
Right.
rules based, no judiciary, very
Mm-hmm.
little democracy because democracy is too sloppy in Russia because people don't participate in politics. He's a vile human being. He was a vile human. Edward Limonov, Edward. He's since passed, but he was like a proto Dugan,
Right.
and they
Alexander
gave
Dugin,
him oxygen.
who like still sucks up to Putin after his daughter was murdered in his stead, maybe just to preserve himself at this point, or maybe to maneuver closer with the knife. Who can say at this point?
And who also still believes in the hollow Earth theory
Really,
that
he's an
there's a
Agartha. He's an
secret.
Agartha Hollow Earth
Oh yeah,
believer.
yes he is.
That's amazing. That is one of my
Uh huh.
favorite goofy conspiracy theories. Like of all the ones, and for those of you that don't know, there are people who believe that the earth is genuinely hollow, that there is an inverted world on the inside that where gravity is reversed. So when you walk on the inside of it, you're stuck to the hull like you're on a Star Trek ship or something. And in the center of it is the orb that is the center of the earth, the heat that comes from the earth, the core that most science sees, but it's the internal sun of the earth, and therefore the closer to what the cloche Garden of Eden idea is with the painted sky concept that God created this domed flat earth, that it's actually the inside of it, and there are entryways at the Antarctica and the Arctic, and that there's
Well, Dugan takes it a little bit differently.
oh
Dugan
yeah,
contends that there was a proto-Slavic race of human beings that found an
proto-Slavic.
entryway out in Siberia,
Okay, yeah. So
and
in the
that
snow,
somewhere
yeah,
out in
very
the
true.
vast expanses of Siberia, there is an entryway to the Hollow Earth. I mean,
Hmm.
the guy is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Right.
And do you know how hard it was for me to get my hands on his book
No.
translated into English? It was
Well,
incredibly hard, and I do not think that's. I don't think that's
an
a
accident.
mystery as to why that. I don't think it's an accident because if people actually could read Dugan,
Yeah.
they would realize he is not to be paid attention to. He's a
Well,
nut.
he's also pretty much a QAnon at this point. Like that's everything else.
No,
That like it's the same mentality. It's the same group of people. And so and the weird part is that during COVID, as all this shit is going down, he's one of the people who's whispering in Putin's ear when all these reports of Putin becoming a paranoid psychopath and getting focused on watching old videos of how Russia should have been great and, getting the
yeah.
entirely wrong message from watching the Val Kilmer Saint movie. So, yeah. The one of the other things, apparently Ukraine has just received, according to Stoltenberg, 1,550 armored vehicles, 230 tanks, and
Yep.
a lot of ammo.
Yep. He
Just
said today
recently.
that they have fulfilled all their promises with military vehicles. I can attest to at least a certain part of that. The last time I was out, when I was out in Zaporizhia 2 weeks ago, You saw a lot of M113 armored personnel carriers, which is kind of this Vietnam era
Right.
technology that we give. I have seen video of both Strikers and Bradleys. The Patriot is here. Huzzah, huzzah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic news. And
Yep.
and I don't know exactly where they're going to position the Patriot. They're either going to position it here in the Capitol. Hopefully,
Mhm.
if they can get a couple citizens in, they can do both. But it's either going to be the Capitol or it's going to be one of their front line, whatever the front line,
Yeah, the
the
military, the missile defense
the
system.
assault. Because right, exactly, the Patriot air defense missile system. And if you
Yeah.
put it in the battlefield, it's so that your jets can attack the ground forces without being attacked by Russian or your enemy
Yeah.
aircraft. So I would not be terribly surprised if the Patriot or a Patriot battery gets sent to the frontline position. But also, obviously, you want to put it here
Mm-hmm.
because this is the seat of the government and you want to be able to protect it, especially if you think they're going to put a nuke on something, which I do not believe they're going to do.
I agree. For the record, Prigozhin believes that the offensive is going to start on May 2nd, and that because the last rain is predicted on the 2nd, and therefore the shelling and all that kind of stuff will begin on that day with full ground troop movement. Less than a week later, as the ground dries. This is his, according to his press service. He thinks they're going to start cutting flanks, according to him. He says, today it's raining. The last rain is due on May 2nd. It takes another week for the wind to dry the soil. After that, the APU will be ready to move. They will they do it on May 9th to, quote, ruin the holiday? Maybe yes, maybe not so. It's only here in Russia that everything is done on holidays, on March 8th and 9th. The armed forces of Ukraine are ready to completely go and cut the flanks. No one covered our flanks, Prigozhin said. So he's in Moscow right now. But his prediction is that
Yes, that's right. I did see he was back in Moscow.
yeah, where it's safe, by the way, because the bombings could start well before the rains end.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're happening now.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of what again, and I've talked about this in the past. Having been to a few wars in my past, there's a shaping period where you kind of like probe and you try and push them to where you want them to be for when you actually do the full attack, that kind of stuff. I think that might already be happening. But
Right.
Prigozhin, I'm going to go out slightly on a limb here and say, as much as I respect a caterer and a restaurateur to
Right.
tell me about tactically sound military doctrine,
Yeah.
I think he's talking out of his ass.
Yeah. Well, I think he's there to bitch about the fact that he's
Yes.
saying that the RF ministry did not protect the Wagner guys, and so that's what he's bitching about. And what he wants is more support for his guys there. So he's like, they're coming. It's coming next week. It's coming next week. That very well could be why. Because he also said, it also said in the article, Prigozhin complained that Wagner's human resources, what a lovely word, were allegedly drying up due to losses and release of mercenaries. And by the way, he started giving out contracts in Sudan and in Africa hand over fist, and they're longer contracts. Yeah, Sudan's a horror show right now. A lot of his guys are there. And they're with the RSF, the strike force. Which is in any other situation where you were talking about a legitimate coup, if you had an actual functioning government, those guys would be the rebels against the main government military. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure they're contributing. I mean,
yeah.
Nothing good comes from Wagner being on the ground anywhere.
No.
It's a vile organization.
This I think you'll appreciate too.
Anybody that would loud taking people out with a sledgehammer.
Right. And brag about it and all that kind of stuff. And your own
then
people, by the way.
Yeah. And then make, chrome memorial sledgehammers as gifts to people. It's just
Yeah.
Anybody's headspace is theirs.
This I think you'll appreciate here. This is there was a leaked conversation between Russian oligarchs where they were quoted as saying Russia has ended up in the clutches of scumbags. This is one of the dudes. Hold on, right down here. Roman Trotsenko and Nikolai Matuszewski leaked online the phrase Russia, which we love so sincerely, is now in the clutches of some scumbags, as heard in the conversation. Current Time Television, which is Nachovici Vremya, Russian news outlet, had the recording of it. Sistema has acquired correspondence containing a link to a publicly available audio recording of a conversation featuring billionaire Roman Trotsenko. The person who's speaking is not specified in the letter, but judging by the conversation, he may be businessman Nikolai Matuszewski. And basically, they're talking about both Putin and Shoigu and Prigozhin, and apparently Lavrov is out on many outs with these guys. All of them.
The whole rod.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, how did that audio get leaked?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way,
and
Matuszewski is saying, I think somebody faked it with AI, which is going to be the out that everybody uses
of course.
now. Everybody's going to say
that's
that.
Gonna increase
I don't know why anybody's going to cop to a recording anymore.
Hal, this is more of the boyars circling around the center of gravity that is Putin.
Right.
They're starting to circle. They're starting to snipe at one another. They're starting. It's infighting, and eventually, when they get that worked out, Putin is either going to have to make a deal with them,
like he did in the 90s,
or they're going to say, "Time for you to go."
Right. And
that's historically what happens in Russia.
Totally. But how do you? I mean, how do you trust that? You know what I mean? Honest to God, at this point, it is so mafioso over there that
it's almost like a better political system would include a way of involving the populace,
right, in actually
and
choosing
then
the leadership,
a peaceful transfer of power,
right.
Jesus, Mary Joseph.
Oh, I know. This
is why Russia is screwed up. This is why Russia is screwed up as we are, and why I really do think, and people complain about me seeing Russians behind every tree, but January 6th to me would just stink of so much of Russia's kind of way of doing things, and
yeah.
The reason why you don't want to have a system like the Russian system is this is what we're witnessing right now.
Yes.
When
when
power is monolithic, when the power falls apart, there's no bloodless or functioning way of transferring power. That's why liberal democracies, as flawed as they are, work a ton better than what we watch in places like Russia or China, Iraq, Iran. Take your pick.
Yeah, it is amazing. How do you? My question is like, once you come to an agreement, how do you turn your back on any of these guys when they say after you? It just reeks of like casino or something. Like you're gonna end up in a basement and there's tarp on the floor when you thought it was like the post-deal signing party. Because there is no reason for them to ultimately keep him alive past a certain point. He's outlived his usefulness anyways. He's certainly fallen as this idea of, a power leader. That's gone within the country. Obviously, there are the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetzes of the world, and to some degree, I guess, Donald Trump still buy the mythology, but they're the only ones. Even the ones who are like calling for a ceasefire and all that kind of stuff are doing it half-heartedly, and not because they believe that Russia has power, but quite the opposite, that they're afraid that country is going to collapse any day now, and they need that sweet NRA money that flowed through in the last 2 elections.
And they're fellow travelers, they're Christian nationalists. They're they love
Anti-gay, all that kind of stuff.
autocracy,
Right. Sure.
anti-gay, all the rest of it. So they can find, like-minded folk globally. They're not so. I mean, you saw Lavrov talking about Tucker,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. They've
foreign
already offered him a
minister
job.
of
They've already,
Russia.
like, Russian state media has already offered him
Yeah,
a job.
yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
not surprising as a joke. They may say stuff like that. It's like
It's a joke.
inviting Trump to move over there. But
It's them
yeah,
trolling. It's them
yeah,
trolling.
yep.
But could you see Blinken coming out because a French channel had some sort of ugly demonstrative kind of nutter butter, and the
Mm-hmm.
French television had this controversy, and Blinken came out and said, "Well, boy, it's bad with shutting off a venue for freedom of speech in France." Everybody go, "Fuck you,"
Right.
which
Yeah.
is what we should say to Lavrov.
Well, that's.
But
I mean,
I do find it interesting that they actually talked about. I mean, Tucker has been discussed a lot in Russia over the last
oh
72
yeah.
hours, whatever it is.
Well, because he
You
was
know?
he was the only guy in the mainstream media carrying their message fully, like full throated,
Mhm.
not tiptoeing around it. He was selling the Russian line for the
Oh
last
yeah.
few years and getting
And
more.
they could
Yeah.
turn to him
Yes.
and go, "Look, Russians, even the Americans realize how corrupt and evil their own government is. Look at Tucker Carlson."
Right.
And it fed the stance internally within Russia that Washington
Right.
was corrupt and evil and all the rest of it.
Yeah. There is a report, and I'm sure you saw this, but this Putin is supposedly he's called up 400,000 more troops for
In kind of a
volunteers.
backhand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So explain that a
it
little
isn't
bit
being
because
referred
it's
to as a mobilization.
yeah. Um, this they are the problem is it would pull almost every young worker off the line in the country. Like every functional person, like, or because they already grabbed the last guy at the assembly line. They already grabbed the second least necessary guy off the assembly line. And now they're working their way up to the competent folks in every job posting. That's the problem with this kind of a pull.
And now they can't. You're starting to get electronic notification that you've been called up, and
Right.
once that notification has been sent out, you are no
Mm-hmm.
longer able to leave.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cross a border. I mean, it's bad. It's bad for
Yeah.
the Russians. And so bringing it back to this leaked audio in this phone conversation. I predicted it. I will give another prediction. There is going to be a period domestically within Russia where the power structures, the power elite, are going to fight. And you said,
Mm.
you trust. Well, that's right. There's going to be a lot of knives in people's backs. There's going to be a lot of people being chucked under buses,
And pushed out of
figuratively.
windows and literally.
Yeah, I mean, but it's going to happen literally and it's going to happen figuratively. But
Mm-hmm.
what eventually will happen is there will be a consolidation of the power elite within Russia.
Right.
And then again, what they will do if Russian history, which tends to repeat itself, does repeat itself yet again, they will then go to the Tsar, Putin, and
Mm-hmm.
and there will have to be because they will say we have consolidated our power.
Right.
Now, either you play ball with us, or we can find a way to work out this power structure where you're still in office, but we kind of take the helm. We take the control of the ship of state.
Yeah.
And I don't see a way for Putin to keep operating the way he has for the last 20 years, he might become a figurehead until they can actually find somebody to really replace him. But he's done, and when the boyars and the power elite and the guys who make the decisions, the guys who have the money, finally, clean house with the rest of them, then we're going to see a major shakeup in Moscow. There's no way that things are going to be the same in the Kremlin or in Moscow after this. This is too devastating a war for them. Losing Ukraine, and if they do eventually lose Crimea, I mean, that's a huge historical shift for them.
They're going to the next right now. I feel like news-wise, it's a bit of a calm before the storm, and you can tell the people who are clamoring online right now for a ceasefire, from Ron DeSantis to the head of Code Pink, are, if they're not getting direct messaging from the Kremlin, they're getting it through sources around them that are like, oh my God, it's terrible. Trying to manipulate the useful idiots into saying the right thing right now. But the reason they want a ceasefire right fucking now is because Russia knows that the spring offensive will be a rout. And if it's anything like the retrieval of Kherson and Kharkiv, and it will be, it absolutely looks like it will, and they end up with Crimea again, it is a absolute turning point in this, to the point where every conversation about a ceasefire or or any kind of negotiations, it'll be on Russia to start saying, they'll be the ones who say absolutely not, and it will be ultimately clear that the seizing of more territory was the entire fucking point. I know you got to jump off in like 5 minutes, but go ahead. Okay.
It will be absolutely fascinating to watch all the people who are clamoring now for just peace at any measure.
Yeah.
What happens if the Ukrainians do take, let's pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Ukrainians take everything back to 1991 borders, which, by the way, I understand there's a bill in Congress to support that. If they take back the 1991 borders, it will be fascinating to see, because what will happen is Kiev will say, okay, now we can negotiate peace. And Moscow will be the one saying, most likely, no way. What about all the guys who are clamoring for peace at any cause or any measure? What will they say then? I think that's going to be interesting to see.
Right.
Because is it just that visceral, I hate war and I want all war to stop? Or are you picking a side? You're picking Russia's side.
And that is precisely what's happening. They are absolutely picking the side. And was it Medea Benjamin, who's the head of Code Pink? She was on Democracy Now! Talking about how there needs to be an immediate ceasefire for peace and blah blah blah. And while I think Amy Goodman has been fairly clear-headed and balanced about it when she's clearly anti-war, but she's very aware of Russia's imperialism, and I think that makes a line for her where her conversation's a lot more balanced. It's imbalanced in the direction of her personal human bias, which I'm okay with. She's not selling some other line, whereas Juan Gonzalez is all in on backing Russia's claiming of the entire territory. At this point, it's pretty sad. And he had and when they had Medea Benjamin on, she's been making the rounds in the last week going, oh my God, we need a ceasefire right this second. And the reason she's saying this is because Russia's going to lose the spring offensive. They are going to. They are not in a position to do this. They are going to get what's coming to them. There's a very strong chance that Crimea will be reclaimed and that there will be a bifurcation of the Donbass all the way to the Russian border, which would spell the end of that crap. The northwestern territory that links Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus will be the toughest area for continued fighting, simply because it borders two friendly Russian areas. Crimea, there's a bridge, and then the land area. If you break that off, you're safe. You can basically, unless they want to try and take it by ships, which they're not going to want to do because they won't be able to do it for long because they'll just lose a bunch of other Moskvas. that's gonna it could happen very quickly. And
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that it's quick because it long-term entrenched war does require more death. Whereas if everything starts to pop off, people have a tendency to retreat in the backfield, and hopefully that's what will happen. That they'll rush back over the Russian border and get the heck out of there to save their own lives, hopefully, and then they'll get another shot at life when this is all over. Because strategically the seizure of Crimea, I think, would be the end of Putin and the end of the idea that that he knows what he's doing. This way. Yeah.
This is territory that Catherine the Great captured. Mm-hmm. This is fundamental to their idea of self.
Yeah.
It's no, there's no way that Putin survives losing Crimea. I think you're right. I think this is. I don't know if it's going to be a rout because of the Russian military force. They're going to be seizing territory where they're going to be welcomed as liberators.
Mm-hmm.
So, that will keep them moving. They won't have to secure territory. One of the problems when you're an invading force, you have to keep your supply chain and you have to pacify the populace. So you have to always be leaving little bits of your military behind as you advance. The Ukrainians will not have to do that.
Nope.
To any significant measure.
Right. And even the Russians that were there, even the Russians that were there, a bunch of them bugged out already. Yep. Russia has been removing a bunch of the folks, especially just rando citizens, the people who were enjoying a beach vacation during a war, which is crazy. But on top of that, I just don't see the people that remained after. It seems like a big portion of them, while they are Russian speaking and whatnot, because they learned to live there after the occupation, but they lived there before 2014 and considered themselves Ukrainian, are going to, played nice for a long time and then can finally speak their mind now that the Russians are gone. And there's going to be a lot of that too.
And there are those who have been consuming a steady diet of Russian propaganda because in the territories where the Russians have actually taken over in the Donbass, they have shut off any other kind of as best they can in this modern age. But a lot of Russian propaganda has been pumped into a lot of minds for the last, since 2014, out in Donetsk and Luhansk.
Right.
So, but I before I leave you, I think you're 100% right. I don't think Prigozhin's right.
Yeah.
So while I am with you on the speed and the success that I hope, and I have my fingers crossed, we will see when the counteroffensive and the spring offensive is actually launched. I don't think Prigozhin has that timetable right. I think we're looking later in May.
Uh-huh.
Maybe early. That's my guesstimate.
Right. Well, I think there's a chance that like I said, long range bombing and artillery stuff will start, and then they will be shuffling troops and other stuff up and down just to make sure that Russia doesn't know where it's coming from and when. For a couple of weeks, and you'll see a lot of head faking, and it's going to happen up here, and then it's going to happen down there, and there's strategic reasoning why sooner rather than later will help them on the world stage to some degree, but also winning it is the most important thing, and decisively so. They
do know that public opinion globally, and in particular the United States, is something they need to maintain. And in order to maintain it, they have to show results. What would be worse is if they rush it and they
botch it.
They're not successful. They botch it. Lots of dead Ukrainians, etc. Not a lot of territory retrieved. That'll be worse than the little Marjorie Taylor Greene BS that's happening right now. So.
Exactly. I'm going to let you go because I know you have to jump over, and you're
going to go talk to
Tom Hartman. Yeah. So go check out Philip Ittner on Tom Hartman Show at the top of the hour.
Oh no, keep watching Hal, and you can watch me afterwards. It'll be on.
No, because
Tom
I'm
will
only
put
doing
it
this.
up on YouTube.
No, I'm only doing this 1 hour today because I wanted to make up for us not being able to
Okay,
talk
well then
yesterday.
definitely do go see
Yeah,
me
jump
with
over.
Tom
It's
in
all
10
good.
minutes.
Yeah, no, I know what I'm doing.
And then
I
I'll
can
see
throw.
you, sir, on Saturday.
Yes, you will. Absolutely. Appreciate it, brother. Be well.
And also wouldn't mind a chance to pick your brain sometime. DM me. I'll tell
Okay,
you
will
why.
do. Okay.
All right. I want to pick
We'll
your
do it.
podcasting brain.
It's okay. All right. Which is
All right, buddy.
yeah, turgid. All right. Cheers.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Off he goes. Thanks for jumping in, everybody. I know this is a sort of special report, but I wanted to address some of the things that were going on. I'm only going to do the top hour so people can hop over to Hartman's show. Can I show you something that was kind of fun, though, real quick? The South Korean president, I don't know if you guys saw this. And and 1 second. For the record, before I get into that, it's very sad to hear about the passing of Jerry Springer. As a alumni of Talk Soup, we used plenty of his clips. My dad ran into him at an event in Cincinnati, and he recognized my dad's last name. And my dad said, "Yeah, Hal's my son." And he said he saved our show by using clips, and it really helped right when we needed it. And he was very nice and always a mensch and also willing to make fun of himself for the most part. He was one of those people who you could disagree with without becoming disagreeable, and that's high praise in this day and age. I just wanted to say that. Now, back to this moment. This is why is that? Hold on. I see. Wait, I'm fixing something real quick. This is the South Korean president, and he's at the White House, and he starts singing American Pie. I don't know what the lead-in was, and I want to watch with you guys just to see, because that's kind of hilarious and amazing. So check this out. Hold on. Let me back it up.
Happy for a while. February made me shiver with a paper I deliver. Bad news on the doorstep. I couldn't have one more step. I can't remember if I tried when I read about his willow bride. Something touched me deep inside the day the music died.
Isn't that nice? That's just sweet. And he, for the record, hits the notes, nails them, and there's feeling in it. It was nice. And then Biden goes, says afterwards, I had no damn idea you could sing. There he goes. Yeah.
We know this is one of your favorite songs, American Pie.
American Pie가 가장 좋아하는 곡 중에 하나시라고 들었습니다. Yes, that's true. Yes, when I was going to school, it was one of my favorite songs.
Very quiet.
We wanted to hear you sing it.
Okay, so he set him up for it. Yeah, there we go.
This is one of your favorite songs, American Pie.
American Pie가 가장 좋아하는 곡 중에 하나시라고 들었습니다. Yes, that's true. Yes, when I was going to school, it was one of my favorite songs.
Well, we wanted to hear you sing it.
It's been a while, but
That's just great. Like this so beats the hell out of him. Like Trump exchanging love letters with Kim Jong-un, and Biden's having the South Korean president sing American Pie.
Long time ago. I still remember how the music used to make me smile. And I really felt my chains, that I could make those people dance. Maybe they'd be happy for a while.
Nice little vibrato on there.
Something touched me deep inside the day the music died.
That's so sweet. I'm getting little goosebumps on that. That's sweet.
Well, to see
To see people actually not be a dick is amazing. Yeah, that was at the state dinner. There he is. Yeah. I'm trying to find better audio of Biden saying, "I had no idea you, I had no damn idea you could sing." That part of it. It's cool. I mean, it's again the wonderful friggin' normalcy of the Biden presidency. Can we appreciate how important that is? Because they used to say oftentimes, and I'm sure you've heard it in your life, they used to say that let me move this real quick. That Washington D.C. was, politics was Hollywood for ugly people. Now, granted, there are plenty of ugly people in Hollywood, and some of us make a good living. As you know, B-list faces in an A-list world, as it were, I think is the thing. But that's part of what we're living through is sort of the ego of now, is that everybody wants to kind of muscle their way to the fame that's involved in politics, and instead of the actual work, right? Wait till the end. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip out on the end part? You guys can watch it. You will. But I have to say, the boringness of politics is where it has value. Thanks. I can live with cute. That's cool. It's worked out very well. All right. Anyways, I'm going to let you guys go because I just think that was a nice moment to end on. And I will see you guys later on this afternoon, 4 o'clock. Remember, because it's a Thursday instead of 3 o'clock. And take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Okay. And thanks for joining on this, kind of last minute-ish morning show. Okay. Bye-bye.